Task Force Smith, an understrength, undertrained, and poorly equipped U.S. infantry battalion with little support was thrown in the battle on 1 July 1950. Arriving hastily from very relaxing soft occupation duty in Japan, they were quickly overrun. Since that time, the cry word of "No more Task Force Smith" has been the watchword of every Army Chief of Staff as he attempts to not allow that debacle ever to happen again. Then the U.S. 24th and parts of the 25th Division were quickly thrown into battle. Due to inadequate defense budgets, they too were under-equipped, partially trained, and under-strength. They too suffered heavy casualties and were pushed steadily south. The U.S. 2nd Division and the Marine Corps 1st Brigade were committed, along with everything the South Korean military could muster. By early August, the battle had stabilized in the southeast corner of the peninsula known as the Busan Perimeter. Do I have any veterans of the Busan Perimeter here? Thank you for your service. Thank you for that fight, that desperate fight. By this time, the North Korean military found themselves overextended, short on personnel, short on supplies, and the U.S. Air Force was pounding the heck out of them every day. Then on September the 15th, to everybody's surprise, U.S. Marine and Army forces conducted a highly successful surprise attack at Incheon, far to the rear of the North Korean Army. The troops of the Busan Perimeter counterattacked out of their defensive positions. The North Koreans were crushed and streamed north in ultimate defeat. By 26 September, the capital of Seoul was recaptured. U.S. and Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel, and by 19 October, the North Korean capital of Pyongyang was captured. At the urging of the theater commander, General Douglas MacArthur, the advance continued. In November, however, as we all know, the Chinese intervened, and U.S. forces and allies were forced to retreat south of the 38th parallel. General Ridgway took over command of the Allied forces. Under his leadership, steady progress was made, Allied forces were reversed, and the North Koreans and Chinese were eventually pushed back north of the 38th parallel. General MacArthur was fired by President Harry Truman, as we all know, in April of 1951. Decisive maneuvers ceased on the peninsula. Elaborate defenses reminiscent of World War I were constructed, and after 2 years of negotiations, the armistice was finally signed. Over 1 million Americans served in South Korea during the war. As has been mentioned, more than 33,000 were killed. 105,000 were wounded. The North Koreans and Chinese, as estimated, lost more than 1 million troops. A staggering loss, even for countries that don't care much about the worth of human life. Civilian losses totaled somewhere around 3 million, we think. The question was asked time and again, was all this worth it? And I'm here to tell you, darn right it was worth it. The results show South Korea has emerged as a fully modernized, democratically governed economic powerhouse and one of our closest allies for years and years. More than 40 million people on the Korean Peninsula owe their freedom to you veterans, both American and South Korean, who served at that time. A far cry from the agrarian nation that started this war. Their neighboring democracies of Japan and Taiwan were allowed also to develop. Who knows what would have happened if North Korea had stayed in South Korea. And today, the aggressor, North Korea, still languishes under one of the most brutal, backward regimes in the world. It has been said by previous speakers, you can go to the DMZ and look north, and at night there's no lights, and there's no hope until the dictatorship collapses. You look to the south, and that is a land of lights and hope and opportunity. The tribute for the war's turnaround goes to the soldiers and Marines, Air Force, that did the fighting. They overcame the lack of preparedness of the United States and South Korea. They molded their units into formidable fighting forces. They relearned how to integrate all parts of combat arms and turned around the battle. You veterans assembled here, you all sitting here and standing over here, are the ones that made the difference. Thank you. I thank you. South Korea thanks you. We all thank you. Now, most veterans don't like to talk about courage, but you demonstrated that every day. The courage is not the absence of fear, but it is the ability to act in spite of your fears. As Senator John McCain wrote in his recent book, Courage Matters, courage is an example for all to emulate. Courage allows brave men to stand for their convictions. Courage keeps us honest to ourselves. Courage requires great love, love that means so much we are willing to sacrifice greatly in order to protect that and our buddies who serve with us. Courage is fired by a sense of duty and honor, a regard for the dignity of others, and the shame we feel if we neglect that. Good leaders tap this well of courage that we all have. Good leaders build strong units, train them hard, and breed confidence and proficiency. Good leaders recognize danger and are trained to overcome it. The role of the leader, as you well know, is paramount in leading military units as well as civilian endeavors. When talking about leadership, President Theodore Roosevelt said it best. And he said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how a strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena, whose faces may be marred with dust and sweat and blood. He errs and comes up short time and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings. But he strives to do the good deeds. He knows the great enthusiasms and the great devotion, and spends himself in a worthy cause. At the best, he knows the triumph of high achievement, or if he fails while daring greatly, so his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat." President Roosevelt was talking about you veterans of the Korean War. You were in the arena 60 to 65 years ago. You freed millions upon millions of citizens of South Korea. Your sacrifice led our nation to organize and maintain sufficient forces that allowed us to continue on and win the Cold War and successfully defeat communism. The Cold War is over. Communism has crumbled to the ash bin of history with the exception of two countries, Cuba and North Korea. And it is clear that the sands of time are running against both of those regimes. So today, we thank you, I thank you, we all thank you for your service on the Korean Peninsula, in the air over the Korean Peninsula, or in the water surrounding the Korean Peninsula, or in the theater in Japan. Thank you for the service, and thank you for what you did for all of us. I am here to tell you, you made a difference. Thank you.